After being an absolute degenerate and running nothing but the raid since its release, I've finally been able to dip my toe into episode echoes, and today I wanted to talk with you all about the weapon selection that has come with this new set of episodic content. Bungie's current release schedule with this episode means that currently we have 6 brand new Vex weapons obtainable in the game via the Breach executable activity, with 2 more weapons releasing in Act 2 of the episode and another 2 in Act 3. For the sake of not needing to make another video on the topic, we'll be covering all 10 in today's video, as we already know the perk rolls and stats for all of them. With all that said, today we're covering the 10 weapons from episode Echoes, talking about their best perks inside of PVE, and the best way to farm them, which, spoiler alert, is running expert difficulty Breach executable. You literally get showered in loot like crazy. So like, subscribe if you enjoy the video today, and let's go ahead and jump into this. Starting off with the Vex Weapon Set's origin trait, let's talk about Radiolaria Transposer. Rapid final blows cause targets to explode into a pool of radiolarian fluid. Think of this perk kind of like a miniature Witherhoard that pops on the ground every now and again, but without dealing near as much damage. You can improve this origin trait via the artifact, and the trait can actually help proc perks like Stats for All, according to tests done by my Twitch chat. But all in all, I find it very underwhelming. A pool spawns once every 3 or so kills of enemies, with the exception of killing a major, for example, which will cause a pool to spawn after just 1 kill. It's not the greatest origin trait, not really the worst either, but let's go ahead and move on to the weapons. Aberrant Action. Starting off with what is easily the best weapon in the entire set, we have ourselves the first ever solar rocket sidearm, and boy oh boy does this thing have some nasty perks. If you're not quite sold on rocket sidearms yet, this one will definitely win you over, as I foresee it becoming the most popular PvE weapon in the game once it releases. The call already is at the #1 spot, and this weapon is just a better version of that in my opinion. Taking a look at the perks, we have some beauties here. In the first column, we have what I will probably opt for, that being Field Prep. I tend to use these weapons for double special loadouts, and having extra reserves is always a welcome addition. We also have Beacon Rounds for those that enjoy tracking, Ambitious for larger magazines, and of course Heal Clip for survivability. The second column gets even nastier, as we have Golden Tricorn for those that lean heavy into ability builds, Demolitionist, Swash if you'd like to pair it with Pugilist in the first column, Reverberation, which increases blast radius after a kill, but I honestly don't think this would be necessary, and of course Incandescent to bring this weapon's ad clear potential up to 11. The personal role that I will end up crafting is probably going to be Field Prep Incan, but there are so many great options here that it's kind of hard to go wrong. CORRASION. Up next, we have another weapon that has yet to be released, but after trying out the new Raid Pulse, all that tells me is that I'm really going to end up liking this thing as well, since it's the same but just arc. Corrosion, of course, comes to us as an Arc 2-burst pulse rifle and looks to bring a little lightning and thunder to the 2-burst archetype. Taking a look at the perks, we have Enlightened Action in the first column for weapon damage improving reload speed, and in the second column we have Frenzy, Volt Shot, and One for All. There isn't really much to discuss here, it's just a brand new pulse rifle frame, which is one of the best frames for pulse rifles in the game, with some good perks to go alongside it, with Volt Shot also being there thanks to it being arc. This is definitely one that I'm probably going to craft the very second that I'm able to. TIMEWORN WAYFARER. This weapon right here is the definition of judging a book by its cover for me. When I saw this weapon was an aggressive frame scout, I kinda lost all interest at first, but after trying out some different roles and just getting to use it for myself, I've come to accept that I'm gonna end up crafting this as soon as I get all my red borders. TIMEWORN WAYFARER comes with 2 very distinct perks in the first column that make it instantly 100 times more interesting than any of the other aggressive frames. And those perks are Dual Loader and Heal Clip. Dual Loader increases the bullets reloaded at a time up to 3, meaning it takes 4 animations to fully load the magazine compared to 6. And you also have Heal Clip being a perk that you can proc almost instantaneously at any given time with how fast these scouts can reload, and then you can just cancel the animation after 2 bullets get chambered. These 2 perks are fantastic for this frame and can be paired with Precision Instrument, which 4th times would be good here too, as well as Incandescent for general ad clear. SIGHTLINE Survey. Up next, we have ourselves a brand new ARC 180 hand cannon, and if you're thinking to yourself, is there any reason for me to use this thing over posterity from Deepstone Crypt? Yes, there is, my friend, and that reason is if you don't have posterity from Deepstone Crypt. The way I look at SIGHTLINE survey is this is a very solid 180 hand cannon if you're either A, brand new player, or B, someone that doesn't raid. The perks it gets aren't half bad, as in the first column we have Enlightened Action, maybe Triple Tap, with the second column featuring Precision Instrument as well as Volt Shot. This thing would be viewed a bit higher if the origin trait on these weapons were a game changer, but as it stands, the weapon just fits the definition of mid. CHRONOPHAGE. Moving along, we have ourselves a brand new Void Trace Rifle, and actually, the first Void Trace Rifle since 𝗦𝗧𝗕𝗦𝗕 came out in Season of the Haunted. So what makes this one special, you may ask? Well, a few things. Firstly, this trace is capable of getting the combination of Repulsor Brace paired with Destabilizing Rounds. Of course, if you're a 𝗦𝗕𝗕𝗦𝗕's hunter, you may want to pair Repulsor Brace with a damage perk instead, like One For All, which can't be done on the 𝗦𝗦𝗕𝗦𝗕. And speaking of things 𝗦𝗦𝗕𝗦𝗕 doesn't have, that is Shoot to Loot. And I really do feel like a lot of newer players truly do sleep on the pure utility of this perk, so I figured I would mention it. All in all though, for general play, the role I'd probably end up crafting would be either Shoot to Loot or auto-loading, paired with One For All, and just call it a day. Veiled Threat. This funky looking auto rifle comes to us as a 720 RPM stasis weapon, and unfortunately it just kinda is already power crept by a 2-year-old Witch Queen auto known as the Krait, which you may have heard of. Regardless, if for some reason you still wanted to craft this weapon, it's best looked at as if it were an SMG and you going the route of CQC related perks, i.e. a role of Threat Detector and Surrounded. You also have some odd picks such as Shoot to Loot and Attrition Orbs in the first column, with Desperate Measures being actually pretty decent in the second column given how little competition there is. The only reason I could justify having this thing around is maybe if you just really liked the way the weapon looks, which I wouldn't blame you. Otherwise, Krait with One For All and Stats for All is basically what you would want. Lost Signal. This grenade launcher comes to us as a one-of-a-kind weapon, as it's essentially a legendary Witherhoard due to its brand new frame, the Area Denial frame, which essentially states that this is a burst fire GL and it creates lingering pools on the floor that damage over time. Now, I knew what I had to say about this grenade launcher would be controversial, so I of course asked Twitter what they thought, and I got answers that were split right down the middle. Some saying they loved it, some saying they hated it, and some saying it needed just a little buff to damage and then it'll become usable. I, however, agree most with what my boy 𝗦𝗦𝗕 had to say, which is that this weapon is used for area denial, and we really don't need any of that in Destiny. What we really just need is to clear out the enemies to begin with. That all being said, I do not like this weapon, but it is one of the most used weapons thus far this expansion, so clearly it does have some fans. Taking a look at the perks, in the first column, I do think you should choose between either Lead from Gold for the ammo economy or auto-loading holster for reloads in the background. And for the second column, if I were to use this weapon, I personally think One For All is a 100% must-have on this weapon. It deals far too little damage without it, and it kinda just feels worthless otherwise. If Bungie happens to increase the base damage in the future, then maybe Reverberation would go pretty crazy here, but One For All is absolutely a must on this GL at the moment, and hopefully Bungie does end up buffing this frame in the future. SPELEOLOGIST. Here we have our final weapon of the video that is not currently obtainable, but it kind of reminds me of an old friend. This machine gun is essentially the solar version of the legendary Retrofit 𝗦𝗦𝗕𝗦𝗕, although I don't know if I'd put them in the same category of usefulness, given that Retrofit was so good mostly because of things like volatile rounds. That said, this rapid fire machine gun does get some similar perks and some not so similar ones. For the similar role to Retrofit, you of course could go with Envious Assassin and Target Lock. This role on Retrofit, which was only different due to 4th times, was pretty handy at bursting down high health enemies like champions for example, and I actually liked it a great deal to be honest. Perhaps this role could be useful in Solar Surge activities, but I won't be crafting this myself. You also could shift from Envious Target Lock to more ad clear focused with One For All, maybe Incandescent, and even Killing Tally. I don't anticipate using this weapon much at all when it comes out, but I'm sure it'll scratch somebody's fancy out there. Faithkeeper. Alright, This rocket launcher is fairly interesting because I wrote this thing off instantly once I saw it, but funnily enough, the same day I decided I'd never bother grinding this thing, I saw a fully dedicated video on this weapon and why you should get it. Personally though, I still think this weapon is pure cope. The reason being is of course it is a precision frame, which does come with built-in tracking rockets, but at the cost of 5% total damage, and I just don't think it's all that worth it given you could just get good at aiming. Now that said, I do think this rocket could have a place in the sandbox when used in GMs, for example. If you're running a 𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗦𝗦 GM specifically, then this could be fairly useful to you. It gets field prep, clown, auto-loading, all of which can be paired with frenzy, explosive light, and bipod. Pretty good perks overall, but right now you're actually able to focus the 𝗦𝗦𝗘𝗦𝗦𝗦 at 𝗬𝗦 if you want a good rocket launcher that won't deal decreased damage, although it isn't craftable, but the perks can be enhanced. So if you want a guaranteed god roll with built-in tracking but less damage, you could go the route of Faithkeeper, but if you want a weapon that deals more damage overall but can't be crafted, 𝗦𝗦𝗘𝗦𝗦𝗘 can be found at 𝗬𝗦. 𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗦. Lastly, for the video, we have a brand new caster frame sword in the form of the 𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗦, and I just don't care much about this thing. It's a stasis sword, which means it can roll with cold steel, which is always fun, but I don't see the appeal in this archetype other than it being a fun waste of heavy ammo. If I'm missing something here, then truly make sure to let me know in the comments, but I just don't see a use case for the sword to justify its grind and resource investment when it comes to getting one crafted. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts and opinions on all of the Vex weapons that have come to Destiny 2 with the episode Echoes release. Feel free to let me know your thoughts down below, as I am just one man, and my opinions definitely aren't objective facts for every Destiny player out there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.